What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on the Tribulation Force channel that I have. So I'm continue reading the Left Behind series on I'm up to chapter 19. I'm up to chapter 19 on page 343. Let's continue. Rayford watched Chloe as she wandered around the PanCon Club, then stared out the window. He felt like a wimp. For days he had told himself not to push, not to badger her. He knew her. She was like him. She would run the other way if he pushed too hard. She had even talked him into backing off of Hadi Durham should Hadi show up. What was the matter with him? Nothing was as it was before or would ever be again. If Bruce Barnes was right, the disappearance of God's people was only the beginning of the most cataclysmic period in the history of the world. And here I am, Rayford thought, worried about offending people. I'm liable to not offend my own daughter right into hell. Rayford also felt bad about his approach to Hadi. He had dealt with his own wrong in having pursued her, and he regretted having led her on. But he could no longer treat her with kid gloves either. What scared him most was that it seemed, from what Bruce was teaching, that many people would be deceived during these days. Whoever came forward with proclamations of peace and unity had to be suspect. There would be no peace. There would be no unity. This was the beginning of the end, and all would be chaos from now on. The chaos would make peacemakers and smooth talkers only more attractive. And to people who didn't want to admit that God had been behind the disappearances, any other explanation would salve their consciences. There was no more time for polite conversation, for gentle persuasion. Rayford had to direct people into the Bible for gentle persuasion. Rayford had to direct people to the Bible, to the prophetic portions. He felt so limited in his understanding. He had always been an erudite reader, but this stuff from Revelation and Daniel and Ezekiel was new and strange to him. Finally, it made sense. He had begun taking Irene's Bible with him everywhere he went, reading it whenever possible. While the first officer read the magazines during his downtime, Rayford would pull out the Bible. What in the world, he was asked more than once. Unashamed, he said he was finding answers in a direction he had never seen before. But with his own daughter and his friend, he had been too polite. Rayford looked at his watch. Still a few minutes before 1 o'clock. He caught Chloe's eye and signaled he was going to make a phone call. He dialed Bruce Barnes and told him what he had been thinking. You're right, Rayford. I went through a few days of that, worried about what people would think of me, not wanting to turn anybody off. It just doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make sense anymore, does it? No, it doesn't, Bruce. I need support. I'm going to start becoming obnoxious, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. If Chloe wants to laugh or run the other way, I'm going to force her to make a decision. She'll have to know exactly what she's doing. She'll have to face what we found in the Bible and deal with it. I mean, the two preachers in Israel alone are enough to give me the confidence that things are happening exactly the way the Bible said they would. Have you been watching this morning? From a distance here in the terminal, they keep rerunning the attack. Rayford, get to a TV right now. What? I'm hanging up, Ray. See what happened to the attackers and see if that doesn't confirm everything we read about the two witnesses. Bruce, go, Rayford, and start witnessing yourself with total confidence. Bruce hung up on him. Rayford knew him well enough, despite their brief relationship, to be more intrigued than offended. He hurried to a TV monitor where he was stunned to hear the report of the deaths of the attackers. He dug out Irene's Bible and read the passage from Revelation Bruce had spoken from. The men in Jerusalem... Sorry, I have a cold, honestly. Or something. Yeah. The men in Jerusalem were the two witnesses, preaching Christ. They had been attacked, and they didn't even have to respond. The attackers had fallen dead, and no harm had been done to the witnesses. Now on CNN, Rayford watched as crowds surged into the area in front of the Wailing Wall to listen to the witnesses. People knelt, weeping, some with their faces on the ground. These are people who had felt the preachers were desecrating the holy place. These were people who had felt the preachers were desecrating the holy place. Now it appeared they were believing what the witnesses said. Or was it merely fear? Rayford knew better. He knew that the first of the 144,000 Jewish evangelists were being converted to Christ before his eyes. Without taking his gaze from the screen, he prayed silently. God, fill me with courage, with power, with whatever I need to be a witness. I don't want to be afraid anymore. I don't want to wait any longer. I don't want to worry about offending. Give me a persuasiveness rooted in the truth of your word. I know it is your spirit that draws people, but use me. I want to reach Chloe. I want to reach Hadi. Please, Lord, help me. The Holy Spirit ended 70 AD and Christ already returned, and the Bible is not the Word of God, but that's just my personal beliefs. Anyway, back to the story. Buck Williams felt naked without his equipment bag. He would feel ready to work only when he had a cellular phone, his tape recorder, and his new laptop. He asked the cabbie to stop by the Global Weekly office so he could pick up the bag. Hadi waited in the cab, but she told him she was not going to be happy if she missed her appointment. Buck stood by the window of the cab. "I'll be just a minute," he said. "I thought you weren't sure whether we wanted to see this guy." "Well, now I do, okay? Call the revenge for rubbing it in or whatever you want, but it's not often you get to tell a captain you met someone he hasn't. You're talking about Nikolai Carpathia or me? Very funny. Anyway, he has met you. This is the captain from that flight where you and I met? Yes. Now hurry. I might want to meet him. Go." Buck called Marge from the lobby. "Could you meet me at the elevator with my equipment bag? I've got a cab waiting here." "I would," she said, "but both Steve and the old man are asking for you." What now, he wondered. Buck checked his watch, wishing the elevator was faster. Such was life in the skyscrapers. He grabbed his bag from Marge, breezed into Steve's office, and said, "What's up? I'm on the run. Boss wants to see us." "What's it about?" Buck said as they headed down the hall. "Eric Miller, I think. Maybe more." "You know Bailey wasn't thrilled at my short notice. He only agreed to it thinking that you jump with the promotion because you know where everything is and what's planned for the next couple of weeks." In Bailey's office, the boss got right to the point. "I'm going to ask you two some pointed questions, and I want some quick and straight answers. A whole bunch of stuff is coming down right now, and we're going to be on top of every bit of it. First off, Plank, rumors are flying that Magwani Ngumo is calling a press conference for late this afternoon, and everybody thinks he's stepping down as Secretary General." "Really?" Plank said. "Don't play dumb with me," Bailey growled. "It doesn't take a genius to figure out what's happening here. If he's stepping down, your guy knows about it. You forget I was in charge of the African Borough where Botswana became an associate member of the European Common Market. Jonathan Stonagel had his fingers all over that. And everybody knows he's one of this Carpathia's guy's angels. What's the connection?" Buck saw Steve pale. Bailey knew more than either of them expected. For the first time in years, Steve sounded nervous, almost panicky. "I'll tell you what I know," he said, but Buck guessed there was more than he didn't say. "My first assignment tomorrow morning is to deny Carpathia's interest in the job. He's going to say he has too many revolutionary ideas, and that he would insist on almost unanimous approval on the parts of the current members. They would have to agree to his ideas for reorganization, a change of emphasis, and a few other things." "Like what?" "I'm not at liberty to." Bailey rose, his face red. "Let me tell you something, Plank. I like you. You've been a superstar for me. I sold you to the rest of the brass when nobody else recognized you had what it takes. You sold me on this punk here, and he's made us all look good. But I paid you 6 figures long before you deserved it because I knew someday it would pay off. And it did. Now, I'm telling you nothing you say here is going to go past these walls, so I don't want you holding out on me. You brats think that because I'm 2 or 3 years from the pasture, I still don't have context, don't have my ear to the ground. Well, let me tell you, my phone's been ringing off the hook since you left here this morning, and I've got a gut feeling something big is coming down. Now, what is it?" "Who's been calling you, sir?" Plank asked. "Well, first off, I get a call from a guy who knows the vice president of Romania. Word over there is the guy has been asked to be prepared to run the day-to-day stuff indefinitely. He's not going to become the new president because they just got one, but that tells me Carpathia expects to be here a while. Then, people I know in Africa tell me Ngumo has some inside track on the Israelite formula, but that he's quietly not happy about the deal requiring him to step down. He's quietly not happy about the deal requiring him to step down from the UN. He's going to do it, but there's going to be trouble if everything doesn't go as promised. He's going to do it, but there's going to be trouble if everything doesn't go as promised. Then, of all things, I get a call from the publisher at Seaboard Monthly wanting to talk to me about how you, Cameron, and his guy that drowned last night were working the same angle as on Carpathia, and whether I think you're going to mysteriously get dead too. I told him that as far as I knew, you were working on a general cover story about the guy and that we were going to be positive. He said his guy intended to take a slightly different approach, zig when everybody else is zagging. Miller was doing a story on the meaning behind disappearances, which I know you were planning for an issue or 2 from now. How that ties in with Carpathia, and why it might be painted in a dark light, I don't know. Do you?" Buck shook his head. I see them as two totally different pieces. I asked Carpathia what he made of what happened, and everybody has heard that answer. I didn't know that's what Miller was working on, and I sure wouldn't have thought he would somehow link Carpathia with the disappearances. Bailey sat back down. To tell you the truth, when I first took the call from the guy at Seaboard, I thought he was calling for reference on you, Cameron. I was thinking if I lose both these turkeys on the same week, I'm taking early retirement. Can we get the stuff out of the way before I make Plank tell me what else he knows? What stuff? Buck said. You looking to leave? I'm not. You taking the promotion? I am. Good. Now, Steve, what else is Carpathia going to push for before he accepts the UN job? Plank hesitated and looked as if he were considering whether he should tell what he knew. I'm telling you, you owe me, Bailey said. Now, I don't intend to use this. I just want to know. Cameron and I have just had to decide which story we're going to push first. I want to get him onto the one that interests me the most, the one about what was behind the disappearances. Sometimes I think we get too snooty as a news magazine and we forget that everyday people out there are scared to death. I want to make some sense out of all this. Now, Steve, you can trust me. I already told you I won't tell anyone or compromise you. Just run it down for me. What does Carpathia want? What is he going to what does Carpathia want? And is he going to take this job? And he's going to take this job. Steve pursed his lips and began reluctantly. He wants a new Security Council set up, which will include some of his own ideas for ambassadors. Like Todd Cawthon from England, Buck said. Probably temporarily. He's not entirely pleased with that relationship, as you may know. Buck suddenly realized that Steve knew everything. And, Bailey pressed, he wants Ngoma personally to insist on him as his replacement, a large majority of vote of the representatives, and two other things that, frankly, I don't think he'll get. Militarily, he wants commitment, disarmament from member nations, the destruction of 90% of their weapons, and the donation of the other 10% to the UN. For peacekeeping purposes, Bailey said. Naive, but logical sounding. You're right. You probably won't get that. What else? Probably the most controversial and least likely. The logistics alone are incredible. The cost, the everything. What? He wants to move the UN. Move it? Steve nodded. Where? It sounds stupid. Everything sounds stupid these days, Bailey said. He wants to move it to Babylon. You're not serious. He is. I hear they've been renovating that city for years. Millions of dollars invested in making it. What, New Babylon? Billions. Think anyone will agree to that? Depends how bad they want him, Steve chuckled. He's on the Tonight Show tonight. He'll be more popular than ever. He's meeting right now with the heads of all these international groups that are in town for unity meetings. What does he want with them? We're still confidential here, right? Steve asked. Of course. He's asking for resolution supporting some of the things he wants to do. The 7-year peace treaty with Israel in exchange for his ability to broker the desert fertilizer formula, the move to New Babylon, the establishment of one religion for the world, probably headquartered in Italy. He's not going to get far with the Jews on that one. They're an exception. He's going to help them rebuild their temple during the years of the peace treaty. He believes they deserve special treatment. And they do, Bailey said. The man is brilliant. Not only have I never seen someone with such revolutionary ideas, but I've also never seen anyone who moves so quickly. Aren't either of you the least bit shaky about this guy? Buck said. It looks to me that like people who get too close wind up eliminated. Shaky? Bailey said. Well, I think he's a little naive, and I'll be very surprised if he gets everything he's asking for. But then he's a politician. He won't couch these as ultimatums. He can still accept the position even if he doesn't get them. It sounds like he may have run roughshod over Nagumo, but I think he had Botswana's best interest in mind. Carpathia will be a better UN chief, and he's right. If what happened in Israel happens to Botswana, Nagumo needs to stay close to home and manage the prosperity. Shaky? No. I'm as impressed with the guy as you two are. He's what we need right now. Nothing wrong with the unity and togetherness at a time of crisis. What about Eric Miller? I think people are making too much of that. We don't know that his death wasn't just what appeared. It was only coincidental with his run-in with you and Carpathia. Anyway, Carpathia didn't know what Miller was after, did he? Not that I know of, Buck said, but he noticed that Steve said nothing. Marge buzzed in on the intercom. Cameron has an urgent message from Hadi Durham. Says she can't wait any longer. Oh no, Buck said. Marge, apologize all over the place for me. Tell her it was unavoidable, that I'll either call her or catch up with her later. Bailey looked disgusted. Is this what can expect from you on work time, Cameron? Actually introduced her to Carpathia this morning and wanted to introduce me to an airline captain in town today for part of that story on what people think happened last week. I'll make no bones about it, Cameron, Bailey said. Let's do the big Carpathia story next issue, then follow up with the theories behind the vanishings after that. If you ask me, that could be the most talked about story we've ever done. I thought we'd beat Time and everybody else in our coverage of the event itself. I liked your stuff, by the way. I don't know that we'll have anything terribly fresh or different about Carpathia, but we have to give it all we've got. Frankly, I love the idea of you running the point of this coverage of all the theories. You must have one of your own. I wish I did, Buck said. I'm as in the dark as anybody. What I'm finding, though, is that the people who have a theory believe in it totally. Well, I've got mine, Bailey said, and it's almost eerie how close it matches Carpathia's, or Rosenzweig's, or whoever. I've got relatives who believe the space alien stuff. I've got an uncle who thinks it was Jesus, but he also thinks Jesus forgot him. Ha! I think it was natural, some kind of phenomenon where all our high-tech stuff interacted with the forces of nature, and we really did a number on ourselves. Okay, so that's part 1 of chapter 19.